My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to TheAstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today we'll be talking about how each of the alien factions of the Star Citizen universe see one another. But before we get into that, I want to thank y'all for your continued support. We're quickly rising in the sub count, and that has everything to do with you watching right now. So if you've been enjoying the videos, be sure to hit the like button, and if you haven't already done so, subscribe, and be sure to hit the bell icon to stay up to date on the latest videos. If you want to go the extra mile, we also have YouTube memberships and Ko-fi for financial donations. Lastly, if you want early, ad-free access to these videos, consider joining the Patreon as well. All those links are in the description. It's pretty easy to tell how each of the alien civilizations feel about humanity and vice versa. That is an interesting topic unto itself and hits home to most people who follow the game, because humanity is the perspective we experience the verse through. Plus, we're human, so we can relate to how a human might deal with something very alien to our own experience. However, how each alien civilization views one another is a bit trickier. It's not helped that currently the only parts of the alien civilizations we can interact with is the ships, so it's not as easy to see how these various groups interact with one another. This topic is one of the most requested episodes in the past, so I decided it was high time to let y'all know about how each of these alien civilizations view each other. Let's start with the OG alien race, which humanity made first contact with first, the Banu. The Banu are kind of like the golden retrievers of the universe, if golden retrievers were into the slave trade, but that's besides the point. The Banu will make friends with everyone, and I mean everyone. They are one of the only species to have some form of trade with literally everyone in the galaxy, with the exception of the Krthok, but even then, I wouldn't put it past them. So their opinion on the Tevarin, Xi'an, and the Vanduul entirely center on their trade relations. Because the Banu are very decentralized, there isn't any across-the-board normal relations with any group. As a result, they trade with the Xi'an, humans, Tevarins, and even some clans of the Vanduul. The last one is very tenuous, and not every Vanduul clan is interested in trading with the Banu, but there are some who are known to trade with them. In general, it's important to remember that the Banu are a chaotic species, lacking a lot of structure that would be required for formal or even informal relationships within their own societies, let alone other species. The Xi'an are a bit different, as they are a highly regulated society and extremely long-lived. There's never a single way they look at any species in reality, but there is always an official one. The official one is usually the most diplomatic, and shouldn't be seen as the true way they view other civilizations. Because they live so long, they also have long memories, with the eldest Xi'an having been alive around first contact with humanity back in 2530. Thus, the opinions of those who lead the Xi'an are also impacted personally by events centuries in the past. With this in mind, just remember that any of these relations might simply be a smokescreen for the true agenda and goals of the Xi'an Empire. The Xi'an and the Banu have been in contact and trading with one another longer than the Banu have known humanity. The two civilizations met when Xi'an explorers stumbled into the tree system in 1924. That's right, 1924 AD. Both sides have shared a deep trading relationship since. The Xi'an and the Tevarin have a more strained relationship. They learned of the Tevarin sometime around the start of the First Tevarin War. After the war ended, many Tevarin fled to the Xi'an Empire, who were already in a tense Cold War with humanity. We know that at the end of the Mezer era, Xi'an often took in human radicals who were seeking the end of the Mezers through their sanctioned criminal houses, to keep a layer of deniability. This may have been how the refugee Tevarin also were treated, because the Second Tevarin War started in a very similar way to how the Mezer era came to an end, with the sudden emergence of large groups who could actively thwart Mezer UEE. Since the Tevarin have no official government today, the Xi'an do not recognize an independent Tevarin state, instead recognizing them as part of the wider UEE. That doesn't mean they don't have interest in growing settlements in unclaimed territory just outside of human space, though, as they could easily use those same Tevarin as pawns against the UEE if they so desired. Lastly, the Xi'an and the Vanduul have a strained relationship. Generally, the two peoples are hostile to one another, but there has been some tenuous trade between them. This is at most a handful of Vanduul clans, and the Xi'an seem to openly disdain the Vanduul as short-sighted barbaric brutes. Speaking of the Vanduul, let's see how they feel about other species of the galaxy. As a brief reminder, the Vanduul do not have a centralized government or structure. They're made of various small to large clans of nomadic raiding ships and can rarely join together in massive hordes led by a charismatic and strong individual. Thus, like the Banu, there is no central opinion of the Vanduul as a species. There are some Vanduul which trade with Banu regularly. We don't know how long this relationship has lasted, but we know it is very limited to very specific clans of Vanduul, and it seems to be a very beneficial partnership for both sides. The Vanduul and Xi'an also have a trade relationship, but it seems to be much more recent. They seem to be mostly cold to the Xi'an, as opposed to the outright hostile stance they have taken with humanity. However, the Vanduul do not trust or like the Xi'an, thinking of them as manipulators and cowards. The Vanduul and Tevarin seem to be absolute mortal enemies. Every record of Tevarin groups encountering Vanduul ships ends in a knockdown, drag-out fight, with the Vanduul valuing strength and martial prowess and the Tevarin valuing unity and martial ability. It's only natural for these two warrior peoples to seek to see who is a better fighter. As of late, it seems that the Tevarin are the better fighters, as every encounter between the two ended in a Tevarin victory. Lastly, the Tevarin are tricky to judge as a species, because the majority of the Tevarin are either living in the UEE or isolated in their own communities in unclaimed systems. There isn't a single Tevarin government anymore. As a result, I will do my best to explain what the relationship was when the Tevarin still did have a state, and how the species interacts with others today. The Tevarin and the Banu seem to have gotten along after they were introduced sometime after the start of the First Tevarin War. The Banu even took in Tevarin refugees after the war and adapted Tevarin shield tech to their own designs. It is also very likely that the Banu aided in the development of the legendary phalanx shield technology, which would be adapted to the Banu's Sukaran shield. Today, the Banu and Tevarin seem to have good relations, with criminal Tevarin groups working well with Sulis that skirt the law in contraband and smuggling. The Tevarin and the Xi'an seem to have a neutral attitude towards one another. It's likely that the Tevarin respected the Xi'an due to both cultures valuing duplicity and stealth in their doctrines. It is also likely that they saw the Xi'an as a means to an end, as the same value could be used against them. Today, it's unknown how Tevarin see the Xi'an, but it's likely the same way they treat humanity, with a hefty dose of skepticism. Lastly, the relationship between the Tevarin and the Vanduul is, like I said earlier, chaotic. The Vanduul hadn't stumbled upon the main actors in the verse until well after the fall of the Tevarin civilization, but that hasn't stopped modern Tevarin groups from butting heads with the Vanduul. It doesn't help that most Tevarin outside the UEE live in or near a system with a jump point to Vanduul space, and due to not being under the protection of the UEE, they have to fend for themselves. Despite this disadvantage, the Tevarin are diametrically opposed to the Vanduul way of war, and this may give them an advantage. The Vanduul are aggressive raiders who want to get into hand-to-hand combat, while the Tevarin are also aggressive raiders. They prefer hit-and-run attacks, attacking targets of importance, not opportunity. Thus, the Vanduul may be easily lured into a trap by the Tevarin, who could then crush them despite being outnumbered. What is for sure known is that the Tevarin inside and outside of the UEE take to fighting the Vanduul with glee, as their settlements and ghettos inside major cities are indiscriminately targeted alongside human ones. This seems to have given the Tevarin the same fury and hatred of the Vanduul as humanity. That is a general overview of how each of the alien species inside the Star Citizen universe sees one another. I know I left out the Cathok and some others, but that is mostly because they are either far too unknown or just too primitive to have developed opinions of the galaxy at large. As always, this is subject to change as these species get more fleshed out and added to the game properly. But for now, I want to know what you think of each of these species in the comments below. I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'd like to thank those on screen now for supporting the channel financially. If you want to throw in a few credits, think about becoming a member on YouTube. And if you want a bit more for your contribution, join the Patreon. Patreons get early, ad-free access to all videos, including exclusive early access to my long-running Complete History of Star Citizen lore series, whose 3 episodes are available to the public now. If you want to know what you're getting, check out the playlist of all of those episodes in the top right. Now, I want to hear your thoughts on this and other lore topics in the comments below. And as always, remember, ex historia ad astra.